It's been considered to be the most violent direct attack against innocent civilians this year. Global outrage and condemnation has continued to trail the gruesome decapitation and murder of 43 farmers in Zarbamari, Borno State, northeast Nigeria by insurgents. While the call for the sacking of the service chief has reached a crescendo height, the President, Major General Muhammadu Buhari's retired, has continued to keep a deafening mute silence, indifference in the face of the rising spate of insecurity in the land. Will the perpetrators of this heinous and senseless act be brought to justice? When will enough really be enough? Is Nigeria now at an advanced form of a failed state? We have with us a youth activist, a member of the Democratic Socialist Movement, and the national executive member of the Socialist Party of Nigeria, Communal Taiwo Hassan Soweto, to discuss this about Marie Masaka. It's a pleasure having you on Sahara TV.
Yeah, thank you very much. Good afternoon.
Let's get your initial reaction to the report of the gruesome murder of farmers in the Northeast. What are your initial reactions to this?
It's very disheartening. You know, it's something that almost brings tears to one's eyes, especially when you also realize that hours after the news broke, that 43 farmers were massacred, you know, with their throats slitted. Then there was an additional report by the United Nations agency that the figures could actually be double of that. Possibly around 110 people could have been gruesomely murdered. And this actually, I think, indicates how much our lives as Nigerians is worth, you know, in this country. Because side by side with that killing, you know, are other unreported killings, kidnapping, criminality across different parts of the country. So that in many ways, Nigeria is a killing field and something has to be done about it.
What do you say to the calls for the sacking of the service chief at this point in time?
Well, I mean, obviously, you can't continue to have these recurrent cases of killings in different parts of the country with the body bags mounting. And you continue to retain those who have been saddled the responsibility of making sure that this does not happen. You know, so that for any government that is serious, you would have expected that the first reaction, not even now, right since the beginning of the year, when it had become apparent that rather than being technically defeated, the insurgency was actually thriving. What should have happened? You know, should have been a rethinking of the strategy, and one of the steps to take would have been to, you know, to change the service chiefs, but also most importantly to look at the funding, you know, of the war effort itself, not just from the point of view of the arms and ammunition, but also the morale of the soldiers themselves in terms of their pay, in terms of their emolument, in terms of, you know, what the state does to their relatives and their families when they are injured or when they are dead. Because this is all encompassing in terms of, you know, why this war against the insurgency has failed. It's not just about, you know, the service chiefs. It's also about the fact that, you know, the ordinary soldier who is sent to war does not have that commitment because his colleagues who are falling, you know, have been generally abandoned by the government. But this government does not care. So the service chiefs have not been changed. Rather, a few months ago, I believe, you know, the government actually declared, you know, that the service chiefs were working well. And with 43 bodies or 110 bodies, I think it has shown that the Buhari government itself, you know, does not deserve to continue to remain in power. Because if that government continues to remain in power, it means that not only would the insurgency continue to thrive, but all other crises that we face socioeconomically, you know, will continue, you know, to increase, you know, with the attendant destructions of lives and also of livelihoods in different parts of the country.
One question that has bothered the minds of a lot of Nigerians at this point in time is, why is the president, Major General Muhammadu Buhari, retired? Why is he still keeping the service chief and refuse to bring in fresh hands or to recalibrate his security strategies? I mean, isn't it shocking to say the least?
It's both shocking and not shocking, really, because shocking from the point of view of the scale of the crisis, from the point of view of the expected human feeling that you expect should come with governance, which would mean that at a certain point you have to take some very tough decisions. But it's not also shocking, when you look at the history of governance in this country and the nature, of the system that we operate, which is a neo-colonial capitalist system, which is dependent on patronage, most of the time, which means that, at any point in time, the government, does not work according to the expectations of the people. But then, when you look at the history of governance in this country, especially since 1999, this is not the first time you have had a government which presides over, a killing field, which presides over a nation which is more or less akin, to an open-air mortuary. In the period of the Obasanjo government, an 8 years tenure, you had shocking killings and crises across different parts of the country. Not up to this scale, but you also had the same kind of shocking efficiency, shocking ineptitude, for those, from the point of view of the presidency and the government as a whole. But when you also look at the Yar'Adua government and also the Jonathan government, there was similar attributes. For instance, if you look at the amnesty program, which the Yar'Adua and the Jonathan government utilized in buying off the militancy in the Niger Delta, without actually resolving the basic fundamental issues that led to the insurgency, it's more or less, close to what the Buhari government is also doing now, by saying that they are rehabilitating former insurgents and giving them so much money, while, the youth of the country who are not yet insurgents now are not giving jobs, are not giving education at home for over 8 months because of ASU strike. Something which means that, as time goes on, they also could be compelled, by the conditions of the country, by economic hardship, to also join other insurgency or criminality. So you have a cycle of a process whereby, as some insurgents are coming out and getting de-radicalized, the economic and political conditions continues to create further recruits, to replace those who have been de-radicalized. So in many ways, it's not so different. There are some differences here and there, but fundamentally, the same pattern of ineptitude is what we have seen in governance over 20 years now. And what it does demonstrate is the fact that the solution to the problems of insecurity and insurgency that, afflicts Nigeria cannot be found in the hands of the capitalist ruling elite, regardless of which political parties they represent, whether APC or PDP or ABGA or anything. Because the only difference is the name of the party. They all subscribe to the same philosophy of stealing public resources blindly, so much that there's not enough resources available that can be utilized to even begin to carry out, because the Boko Haram insurgency is not just a product of fanaticism, religious fanaticism alone. I've just read a report yesterday of a radicalized former insurgent who told of how he graduated from a street urchin from an Amajiri into a Boko Haram commander, having about 3 wives and living large as a Boko Haram commander. And according to him, his life now as an IDP is shocking to him because he used to command so much resources and so much power. And many of his colleagues who were similarly de-radicalized are finding their way back to Sambisa forest. And that's to show you that it takes more than deploying the army. It takes more than military expedition. It's also more about the socioeconomic reorientation and re-engineering of Nigeria. And that is why we need a socialist transformation. If we are really going to begin, to tackle this menace of insurgency and also other crises that afflict us as a nation.
Boko Haram is ruling the northeast, and criminal gangs, armed bandits are ruling the northwest. As against, which is far from the successes, so to say, claims by the military. Based on the facts and figures that we tend to have from the north at this point in time, we continue to have the contradiction of government claims of successes against the insurgents. I want to ask you, what do we say about the security forces' ability to contain the situation? Have they totally lost control?
Obviously, they have totally lost control. The Nigerian army is not the same, it used to be decades past. The legacy of military rule and the associated corruption that has afflicted huge numbers of the top layers of the army, alongside with all other factors, have actually succeeded in making the army very inept and incapable of actually meeting its duties under the Constitution to safeguard the territorial integrity of Nigeria. So much that today, a not well-armed, because when Boko Haram started, it wasn't so as well-armed as it became later on, and the way they rose, to become one of the most, dreaded terrorist organization in this part of the world, says so much about the weaknesses of the army, in Nigeria today. And what is responsible is also because when you look at the structure of the Nigerian army today, like I was trying to say earlier on, you have a situation whereby for many of the lower cadres, their lives, their conditions, it's not so much different from the average lives of ordinary Nigerians. And the kind of job they have to do requires, the sacrifice of limbs and lives. So you'd have expected that for a government that wants to seriously fight insurgency, that there will be certain provisions that ensure that a soldier feels confident that even if he dies in the process of defending, Nigeria or the Nigerian people, his family will not suffer. But today, there are many tales of families of soldiers who are falling in the battle, who are completely living, in poverty today. There are also very many number of soldiers and officers who are undergoing court martials, today for years now, because they strove to speak up against the conditions with which, they are fighting the war. There was some investigative report carried out by some online media organizations a number of years ago, which described how soldiers had to buy their own bullets, because the bullets that they are given is rationed so much that, you have to buy your own bullet in order to ensure that you have something, to even fight with. This is the condition of things. And when you look at the chief of army staff, he's pursuing the war more or less like, an object of personal glory, than trying to actually put the structures in place to ensure that an average soldier feels confident to go to war. It's not just about somebody moving the headquarters of the military to the war zone and going about in military attires at the trenches. It's about whether you are there or not, whether that man, that soldier, is confident, to fight, to death in defense of Nigeria. But then we have to ask ourselves, who exactly can fight to death for Nigeria today? Even lecturers are far to damn tools for 8 months, despite their patriotism in not running out of the country, but staying back in the university system that is completely desolate to try and impart knowledge. But government has decided to take that they are committed and patriotism for granted. Is there a policeman who can die for Nigeria today? And that's because Nigeria has been run aground by vultures, capitalist vultures, who have turned a country which should be prosperous into a desert, into a failed state. And that's the more reason why the struggle that the youth have started since October must be continued. There must be a process of recalibrating and refounding that struggle, not just to fight police brutality, but actually to fight to end the capitalist system and enthrone a socialist alternative. That's the only way out, for us.
Let me get your reaction to the country's rubber stamp, so to say, legislature and the docility of this legislature. Shouldn't the National Assembly have called the president to their chambers for questioning? I mean, what's your take on the National Assembly stance so far?
It's very, shameful, but it's also true to type. I mean, there's never been an independent National Assembly since the return to civil rule. The only time when you see some measure of independence is when there is a conflict, over one thing or the other that affects the interests of the legislatures. But as soon as that is resolved, you don't find the legislature actually standing, for the interest, either of the nation, of the common people. And that is what we see today. And it's not just at the federal level. Even in Lagos State, and many other states across the country, despite the, complete, fraud and corruption and looting that the chief executive carries out, the legislature is not often able to call them to question because they also are partaking in the largesse. So why would they speak out? And that is the more reason why today there is a need for the working people and the youth, to mobilize for a revolutionary struggle to begin to transform this nation. And that requires the formation of a mass workers' political alternative. We need a democracy that is truly for the people and a product of the desire of the people. This democracy is not for the mass of the people. It is only for a minority. And that is why the legislature does not represent the average Nigerians. The judiciary is not independent, does not represent the average Nigerians. If a lawyer decides to go to court now to challenge while a president has to continue to remain in power, despite the fact that he has not been able to fulfill the most basic of his responsibilities, which is protection of lives and properties, that case may go on for the next 10 years in our courts.
Let's quickly round this up finally. Considering the Zarbamari massacre, the insecurity, the state of insecurity in the country, the fact that terrorists, kidnappers, and bandits continue to prowl, the absentee presidency, the weak military and corrupt police, are we now dealing with an advanced form of state collapse? What should be done to tackle the insecurity at this point in time?
Obviously, there's an element of state collapse that is present in Nigeria today, but not just today. Actually, since 1999, there is an element of state collapse. In many parts of the Northeast, the state and state apparatus are not in control of large swaths of territory. But also in parts of the Northwest today, in part of the East today, and in part of the Southwest, you are beginning to also see, some cases of criminality and existence of gangs and criminal gangs. So it's not an advanced form yet, but there's implicit in the situation an incipient collapse, of state power. And that is very ominous because given the situation in Nigeria today, where you have mass poverty in the midst of penury already, unemployment and all of that, a situation where the state is not able to meet up with the responsibility of internal security can open up an avalanche of crisis. And that is why, for us in the Socialist Party of Nigeria, we are putting forward to the people of the Northeast, and I think this demand is also very important for other parts of the country, the need for independent communal self-defense, democratically formed by people in the community, to be able to ensure that there's, a force that is able to protect the lives and properties of people in a particular area. We think that this kind of communal self-defense should not be sectarian. It should be composed of every working people, regardless of their faith or where they are come from, to ensure that the lives and property of people are defended at all times. This is a proposal that I think that is not just valid for the North, but also for areas in the South, because the proposal for an Amotekun is very clearly something that cannot work. Despite Amotekun, you have had a royal father, murdered in cold blood just a few days ago. That's to tell you that the state, not just at the federal, but also at other levels, is completely incapable of providing security. And the ball now falls in the court, of the working people to begin to fight for their own security, but also for Nigeria, where human lives, will not be lost in the way we are seeing it today.
Comrade Taiwo Hassan Soweto, thank you so much. We appreciate your insightful analysis.